live. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whenever you are, wherever you are, thanks for joining the Design of Everyday People, where I talk to senior designers from all over the world and where you get to ask them literally anything. So stick around until the end, where we'll get your questions answered towards the end half of this event. But of course, you can always drop the comments and questions in as we walk through some of the topics. And I want to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you are watching wherever the world you are from, please let me know in the comments below with an emoji or the city that you're tuning in from, just so we know we are not just speaking to ourselves. Okay, so drop that in there in the comments. And I'll try and bring up some of these people from all around the world tuning in. So welcome to How Designers Write Engaging Case Studies, a hot topic I think a lot of people care about. And before we get into it, we always start with a round of introductions. As I have you on the mic now, or me on the mic now, I'll go first. So I'm Chris. I'm the founder of UX Playbook, where I help designers navigate a fuzzy career in UX with playbooks, courses, and coaching, from building your first portfolio to leading your first design team, and resources to help you get clarity. But that's enough about me. If you've been here before, you're probably sick of that intro. Today, I'm joined by Anfisa. Anfisa, I should have asked you your surname, so I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not going to try, but you can tell me when I bring you on. She is a senior product designer, a content creator, and also a UX educator working on Into UX design. So let's bring Anfisa out and find out more about her. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. Can you hear me all right? All good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Great.
So we have some folks, think someone from Canada, someone from Egypt, someone from India. We have Joseph, another content creator from tuning in from Singapore. Well done. So Anfisa, let's find out more about you. For the audience members that don't know you, why don't you just give us a quick intro?
Sri Lanka. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, well, how do I do this? You need like this creative muscle practicing doing those intros. Yeah, my name is Anfisa. I've been a content creator for the last about like 7-8 years, to be honest. I don't know, it's been a while. I'm a senior product designer working in hospitality. And what I usually do these days is helping people to land meaningful jobs. I call it meaningful because a lot of us are feeling today a little bit burnt out from the industry. The tech industry wasn't very kind to us in the last 2 years, 2-3 years. So I'm trying to help people to stay a bit more motivated and find the jobs that makes people fulfilled, but at the same time also find the job that, keep you happy, I guess. So yeah, that's the thing I'm doing right now. I have a podcast also called Honest UX Talks. I don't know if you've heard about this, but yeah, those are the few things that I currently do.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And before we jump into the topic, again, I want to remind folks to drop in those questions in the comments, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or LinkedIn or wherever you are. And we'll try our best to answer them towards the back half of talking about this, how to write engaging case studies, right? So without further ado, let's just dive in. And I want to set up this conversation like this. So a statistic that I read the other day from the State of the Design Job Market 2024, I think it was an ADP list research, 50% of designers and only 50% secure a new job within 3 months. And from the folks that I've been speaking to, that's actually significantly like longer, right? Like 3 months is actually a bit of a miracle these days. Like I don't hear that too often. And so the question that begs is, well, why? Well, portfolios and case studies are too long, either service level, not written well, cookie cutter process, not catering to the audience. There's so many reasons why a designer won't get hired just from showing that piece of work. So let's talk about some of these topics. And I want to set you up here, Anfisa, which is I really love the way that you expressed how how to approach the design of your case study. You mentioned like designing a case study is not much different from designing a book. Uh, and why don't you sort of dive into that and tell me the meaning behind that?
All right, let's do this. I wonder if I should start from the reasons, because you started from the topic of like why is it? We can start there and we can transition right later towards the book and how to design case studies to stand out in the market. I think there are so many reasons today, and I guess it makes more sense to start from the context and why it is actually important for us to focus and spend an extra effort in trying to stand out. Not even effort sometimes. It's just like understanding how do you stand out, to be honest. And so yeah, the main context today is that indeed, like if 3 years ago the market was very heated, there were much more designers than jobs supply. Obviously, the power was in our court as designers, right? These days, the situation has changed. In the last 3 years, we've all seen the global tech crisis, the recession, the layoffs, and many companies were like freezing their hiring budget. So I don't need to repeat this. We all probably have been through it. Some of us got laid off. Some of us found jobs. Some of us get laid off twice. I was laid off twice in the beginning of COVID, in the end of 2021. So actually the very beginning of the tech layoffs. So we've all been through the situation. We know people who have been through the situations. The reason why it got so hard these days is because when the supply is so much bigger than the demand, obviously it creates a strong competition. So today, a lot of the hiring managers, their team were, for example, laid off. They are now very stretched thin. They are very stressed, very understaffed. They have so much priorities now to shuffle, and they have absolutely zero time to really look deeply through each portfolio. And if they got like 10 portfolio applications, great, and they had time to review those portfolios, we had so much more opportunities to stand out. These days, if you're a hiring manager, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the hiring manager or even the recruiter that receives those 500 applications sometimes through the ATS application tracking systems, you can imagine how much more stress it is, while they only got less time if their team was partly laid off. So we can imagine that the context is completely different. The fears are different. The skills that are asked from designers are also quite different, because when the companies are struggling economically, we obviously need to start shifting how we operate, right, as designers. So what we prioritize in our design processes. So today, if we put ourselves again in the shoes of the hiring managers who received 50 portfolios and they have only this amount of time in their calendar to actually look through those portfolios, it becomes essential that we put an extra accent on storytelling, on understanding how to put the best foot forward and what to pitch as designers, how to present ourselves so that we stand out in front of all those, like you said, cookie cutter templated portfolios. Okay, I will now probably segue into like book allegory and what it means. So I I was basically, I can start from my quick story and then explain the idea about the idea about the book. My story was that I was once preparing the Home Tech Challenge presentation. It was exactly, I mentioned, I was laid off in 2020, beginning of COVID, and I was looking for a job because I was very like in a pickle situation. I was literally signing my very first home mortgage and I needed the job, and suddenly I was laid off. So the pressure was on and I really needed to make an impression as I was applying. I also felt like I need to know what I'm speaking about because I have courses. I don't know. I help designers and everything. So I should sound confident, except that I wasn't. And as I started presenting my process to one of the interviewers, I was presenting it back then, my Home Tech Challenge presentation. I took them through every single step I followed in my process. And as I was taking them through, like, this is my process. Here, this is how much time it took. These are the questions I asked from the users. Here is how I brainstormed. Here are the sticky notes. Here is the impact effort prioritization metrics. Here is the ideas prioritization. Here is like all the steps I followed in that process. And it took already like 25 minutes to just go through the process, and I didn't even get to the design solutions. I looked at the hiring manager and I quickly realized that I'm failing because her face just said it all. Like, it was B was with the capital B, boredom. So in that moment, I realized that the process like the way I approached explaining my process was all the steps I followed was just not engaging. It was not making a cut. And it was also 10 p.m. in the evening. So I didn't really take into account that this hiring manager was already super tired. They were just like not taking it. It was very boring. And they also asked me, did I ever do the presentation for the client? Because it sounded like I didn't know what I'm doing. Because it was very in the wrong tone of the voice. It was not in the business language. It was in design world language. It was basically the case study presentation I did for design community, not for the client who cared about the business and how the design I'm doing will help them out. So at that moment, I realized I'm doing something wrong. And 2 years later, among the tech crisis and me searching for the next job, I started receiving a lot of portfolio reviews requests in the mentoring page I had. And after reviewing like tens of portfolios, I started seeing the trend that most of us fall under the trap of following the process so strongly. Most of us are so attached to the steps we follow, checking the boxes with, yes, I did my research. Yes, I did my prioritization. I talked to this, I talked to that. I did my workshop. I did this and this and this. We're focusing so much on like reporting our processes rather than actually explaining our decision-making process and understanding the perspective of who we are designing our presentations for. That somehow we all became the slaves of our processes. Now, if we want to change this perspective, what I personally find helpful sometimes is to reframe. Forget about the job hunting space, forget about our cookie cutters, the double diamonds, all the things that we're so much heard about and we always preach. Forget about this. Think about other contexts and how do other, other, I don't know, creatives stand out in the market. An example we can take here is this example you brought up earlier with the book. So imagine you're traveling today, you're walking down the street in the Bucharest in Romania, and you're seeing the beautiful bookshop. So you want to enter the bookshop and buy yourself a little souvenir. Maybe you collect different design books. So you enter the bookstore, and there are so many books. It's beautiful. And you're like, okay, where is the design bookstore, right? You first want to find that shelf or that department with design books because you probably won't find the design book in the culinary section. So you go to the book section with book stand with design books. As you arrive to the book stand, you see a lot of beautiful books, a lot of beautiful covers. Which book do you pick? Chances are you're picking the book that looks the best. Like we judge book by its cover very often. So we start with like, okay, checking the book covers. We pick the book that stands out the most for us. We read the title. Does the title engage me? Does the title invite me to actually read? Do I learn something from reading this book? You open it, and probably you don't stay there in the bookstore and start reading the whole book from the page number 1 to page number 200, right? You don't have time for that. What you do, you skim through it, you scan through it, and most likely also start from the title of content to kind of see what are the sections telling you. Do you learn something from just scanning through it quickly? And so as you are staying there, finding this interesting, curious book, you maybe compare also a couple of other books, but you basically find something that looks interesting to you, that by scanning through, you understand, okay, there is an interesting content. I actually want to learn more about it. I want to take this book to the cashier and bring it home and read it at home in a more, like, I guess, normal way, right? So that's the allegory for us to frame this and apply the same mindset to the case studies that we put today online and send out to the hiring managers, right? Because if you think about it, it's the same process. Hiring manager landing in our portfolios, first you need to make sure you're the right designer, senior, fintech experience. Great, I'm in the right bookshelf section. There are a couple of thumbnails there. Which case study do I pick? I don't have time to read all of your 10 case studies. I'm going to pick one or two. So the thumbnail needs to already tell the story, what's inside. The title, it needs to be inviting. It needs to tell an interesting story. It cannot be just another abracadabra, something that you don't know about. And so as you open it, you also probably don't sit and read like all the reports if you have 50 other portfolios to read through. You probably scan through these titles. And it needs to be visual. It needs to hold you by hand and tell you what you'll find inside. And only if it is engaging and checks all the boxes, you are likely gonna invite this person to have a proper conversation and quote unquote read the book. So that's why I kind of brought this idea of, comparing to other contexts, for example, the bookstore experience.
Yeah, I really like that. And what you said reminded me of this analogy I like to use when we specifically talk about titles and thumbnails, which is like YouTube videos. So you look
Mm,
at the thumbnail first, and then you read the title, right? We
yeah.
are the visual creature. So if it's not inviting, as you said, then people aren't going to click on it, right?
Mhm.
Same with, when we're browsing through things like, on social media, it's kind of the same principle of visual and title. And even though some YouTube like titles and thumbnail are quite clickbaity, but
Mhm.
that serves that purpose, right? If you're just going to say admin CMS user management system, and then like who cares about that thing? But if
Called
it,
blah blah.
yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
people would say name that nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly. And then like it would be way cooler if it was like increased retention by X%. Then they're like, whoa, okay, well, how did you do that? Or like, what did you do
Mhm.
it on, right? So
Yeah.
I think that could be a better approach. So you had this analogy of like, okay, the bookstore, the right book, um, and then so if we just play out that analogy and say, okay, the hiring manager is coming in, trying to find the right book, finds the right section of the book, starts browsing, and then how do I, as the designer or author of the book, how do I make it sellable to that hiring manager? Are there some things that we can kind of touch on to give folks some tips here?
I'm so sorry. I was looking at some comments. So the
Yeah.
question is, how do I stand out in the case study yourself? Or did I hear you
Yeah, like
correct? No.
if we take the no, sorry, if we take the author sort of
Okay.
analogy, how
Mm,
do I make it like how do I want to sell this book to a hiring manager? Like what does a hiring manager
mm,
care about? Like what are some of those
mm.
things that I know you already touched on, but let's kind of double
Yeah,
click on that. Yeah.
that sounds good. Um, there are a lot of components there, right? So obviously, because very often we don't know where to start, we start from this like default path, path some people already took, right? We saw a few case studies on Medium, on Behance, on websites, and we feel like, okay, people follow this path. This seems to be safe. It works. I'm just because I don't know how to do this the best. I'm just gonna follow this path. And what we don't realize is that when everybody follows that path, we and like hiring manager end up watching through hundreds of same portfolios. They look through the same. Another designer did user personas, did user journeys, did this and this and this and this. So I always want to remind this again. I already probably said this, but I'm gonna remind this just because we forget about this and we constantly think that it's a safe path. Let's just do this. It's definitely not gonna hurt. Unfortunately, it does hurt because the way to stand out today is to acknowledge who you are as designer, what are your strengths is, what do you want to pitch. You only have maximum 1 minute to make an impression. You have to pitch it. It's almost like an elevator pitch. You have to make sure you know what your strengths are, what you can bring to the table to this business, understanding the business context, and which of those sides that you are proud of as a designer you want to put forward, because you probably can do everything. We all can do everything. We're professionals. But what are the things that will make you stand out in front of others? And that always starts from reflection and understanding who you are as designer. Even as junior designer, there are already soft skills you can take into account. Like if you worked into accounting, probably you worked under pressure and the high stress timelines, under analyzing a lot of details and finding the best problem solving solution, right? That's already an angle you can take. Or if you, I don't know, translator, or I don't know, like teacher, you probably can put this like pitch of being empathetic, building the storytelling, etc. So, what is the angle that you want people to take away from reading your case study? What's the thing that they need to remember you with? And we even have I have this workshop in the community I'm running where we literally start the start thinking about our case studies from literally understanding what is the thing that they need to take away from scanning your portfolio. What will people have to think about it? Like, think about the Twitter things, like what will people post about you, like products do, right? Same, what should hiring manager think about you when they skim through your case study? And the second thing is, what would people working with me on this case study or in this project tell about me? What are the strengths that I showcased working on this project? Was it analytical? Was I help with solving quick problems? Was I very good with alignment? What are the things that actually were stand out in this project? And you kind of want to have those as the stellars and let them also partly tell the story. But then, obviously, it goes back to how do you write your story. So understanding what are your strengths is good, is a good start, solid start, because it will give you an angle that many people don't do. They go for the safe pass. You already know what you're pitching here. The second part is obviously structuring your project, structuring your case study that is not templated. And it means really embracing the story you went through. There were a lot of things you did there, most likely. You don't want to turn this into a report. You really need to almost strategically prioritize the right parts of the stories. You want to understand the beginning, the end, and the middle, the classic storytelling, right? You want to understand what was the start, what was the opposite of it, what was the end. And in the middle, as you go through the process, explorations, insights, blah, blah, what was the opposition? What was the force, the conflict, the thing that didn't let you do this easily? You always want to make sure it also has some like, not to say stress, but it has the opposing power that was preventing you from achieving this goal. Something that you've learned from the insight that changed the course of your project, or something else came up in the company, I don't know, priority roadmap. So you had to do the pivot, or I don't know, the stakeholder was very against the design solution you were going for. Right? So what are the things that didn't let you do this, and how did you overcome those challenges? Don't forget that if we want to keep it engaging, if we want hiring managers to actually scan through our project, it cannot be sugar coated, beautiful, and everything was smooth. We always experience challenges. What was the challenge you went through, and how did you overcome it? That's another thing I always want to make sure people remember when they write their case study. But that's already a sort of a new topic that I started, because we started from like, how do I stand out? That's about reflection. But the second part is always, how do you write case study that's engaging, which I guess getting into the different direction now.
That's okay. Like, so you mentioned like the three story act, right? And you said some kind of like messy middle. So the classic storytelling framework is like set up, conflict resolution, right? Context of
Mhm.
what's happening, the conflict, maybe the messy process, things didn't go right, and then the resolution, how you solved it. Did you is that something that you recommend for all case studies, like a structure similar to that, or have you used or done any other sort of different ways of writing that story yourself?
Yeah, I always try to keep it like, for me, everything is a story. Like, every media piece is a story, and it's even if like if you try to find it creative ways to tell the story, there is always different interesting ways and angles to tell the story, but it always have this structure. Always, it always have the beginning, end, and the middle. And middle has to have this transformational moment. Something happened, something was opposing me, and this is how I solved it. Right? Music, advertisement, content, everything we do today, creative pieces out there, content pieces, they have the same structure. So it's pretty much the same with like double diamond or whatever, like design thinking, right? Okay, we can go for this like exactly the steps that were written down in the double diamond or design thinking. Okay, but you can also adjust it. You can be agile in the way you work, and you can pick the pieces that suit that story or that design process the best. So critical thinking, so what type of information you want to present. And so how you do this, it will always still have beginning, middle, and end. The transformation in the middle and the end, that's the opposite of the beginning, that's given. But how you want to tell it, it's a different story. Yes, you can package it differently. You can have 4 mini stories if you have been working on a big platform project. If it was a redesign, it's pretty simple story. Before and after, explorations, opposition, there we go, measurements, proofs, etc. Or if it was a new feature, you were in the dark, you were exploring how to do this again, you didn't know anything, you ended up with knowing something. In the middle, you're going through this messy process, figuring out one insight, somebody's against it, you fight through it, blah, blah, blah. You arrive to a final result, with, again, from dark to bright. So the structure is always the same. How you package things, how complex is the story, how many mini stories inside, that could change. Just like with the movies, some movies have more hooks, more, I don't know, jump scares, etc. Like those tactics we're using, the frames we're using, the like, I guess the tone of the voice of the story could change, but the structure is always kind of the same.
Yeah, I recently came across this principle called Minto's pyramid principle, and it's a
Yeah.
really interesting one for communication, where I like it for case studies just because, excuse me, you get to the meat right at the front, right? So let me just break it down for the audience, which is, so there's a pyramid, right? The top, middle, and the bottom. So the three-act story again. But instead of the conclusion being at the bottom, it's actually at the top. So the results, the key impact, where all the project stands after your good work. So you're just giving the hiring manager, here it is, here's the abstract of my thesis. Like, just take it and run with it. You'll know everything at the first, 1 or 2 paragraphs. And then the second layer of this pyramid is your key arguments. So imagine the few key features or the few key decisions you made to move the needle, to push that project forward, right? And then the third is like in-depth explanation of like how things were achieved. Maybe it's more processy stuff, maybe it's more appendix sort of stuff or visuals to back up your claim. So what you're doing is you're basically reversing. You're saying, hey, I want to front load the information so you don't have to go through the work. If you're interested in it, then you could read more, then you can read more, right? And then obviously you could finish with like learnings or whatever. But I quite like that in terms of not only for case studies, but also for presenting your case studies, not just writing your case studies, but presenting that, because you're saying, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today, guys, and then go into it, right? And you're setting that context up front.
I can add here a little point here around the Minto pyramid. I also quite like it. I personally use it a lot for presentations versus the self-scanning web experiences, because a lot of people, I'm not sure why, but a lot of the people don't realize the difference between the website experience and the case study presentation. These are two different case study presentations. One is designed for self-scanning experience, where nobody's here to tell you what to look at, what to know, here's the extra detail. It's just a self-scan. It has to be self-explanatory. It almost has to tick the boxes to say, yes, here's what I can do well, and here's how I do this. And only it needs to leave you wondering, tell me more about it, sort of, right, for the hiring manager. Whereas when it comes to actual case study presentation, it's a different context. Yeah, the end result still the same, but the way you tell the story is completely different, because now you are here to give you those, like, if you were saying, right, the key argument, what was in the middle, I forgot already, but and then at the end there is like this details, I guess. Yeah, so in that Minto pyramid, it works really well when it comes to presentation, in my experience at least, because your slide is this key point. This is the thing. It could be visual, it could just be a sense of feeling you want people to feel at the moment when you're telling your story. You're here staying, and with your own words can actually expand on those details, arguments, and explaining your thinking. So I personally love the Minto pyramid when you are presenting, because this way you can add a little bit. You can say, here's the, like, a hook or key argument, and here's the statement. Then you can start adding more arguments why, and then if necessary, if time allows or if the context allows you, you can start adding more details, zooming into details also with your visuals and the presentation, etc. So I kind of find it very useful. However, there is a quick disclaimer here, because I see some people are joining here from Asia, and I guess you, Chris, can tell to this as well. But I know that in some parts of the world, or for example, Germany is a good example, because we are now designing in the remote world, and a lot of the times we're doing it in English, and most of the context requires us to think like Western people, right? Like, this is what we do. We do to the point, and then we back it up with arguments. In some parts of the world, in some demographies, it's actually the opposite, and we have to account to who you're designing for. Just like with my story that I was presenting my case study to designers, not to the business customers. I failed to understand who I'm designing for. And so you always have to remember in which context you're presenting this, because, for example, I know in Germany, I don't know if you guys have here people from Germany. Maybe you can back me up. It could be also me being wrong, but I've heard the version where it's actually the opposite. You first have to start with arguments and only then lead to the key solutions, because this way people will trust you better, rather than this is the argument, I told you so, like that's it. And then if you want, I can give you some arguments. And I feel like it's also because how people think, how academic, bureaucratic is their background, how the story, like in the US, I've heard, for example, the reason why it needs to be to the point is because US has people from all around the world, and to make things a bit easier for everyone so everybody would understand you, you need to start simple and then expand and add more layers in complexity. Whereas in other demographies, like in Germany, for example, or maybe in Asia somewhere, you have to start from arguments and then move to the key statements. So it depends always, but this is something to keep in mind if you know what type of clients you're working with.
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? I mean, any sort of good understanding of your audience will just
Hmm.
get the key message across better, and that's basically what we do, right,
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
designers. So that makes a lot of sense. Before we move to the questions, I I want to address something that potentially some people might ask, but if they don't, I'll ask for them. Is that how good do I have to be a writer to write an engaging
Hmm.
case study? Because I think a lot of designers, well, especially me, just speaking for myself, I didn't get into design to write, but it just turns out I have to write a lot. So, like, how important is that? And is there
Yeah.
things to remedy, like, not writing?
That's a good question. And you're good. You're doing such a good job with the writing. I look at you like, okay, I have to repeat those kind of tactics. Is good. So, but I think honestly, it's obviously different, because if you are very much into UI visual communication, maybe you are not so much into UI, or like even content writing, UX writing. But it comes down, it's still design thinking to me personally. So yes, it uses new skills, it uses new sort of muscles for you to build that and become comfortable at writing. But we still have to all become good writers, because at the end of the day, either it is visual communication or content communication, it's still communication. As designers, we communicate. Our designs communicate. They communicate. It's the same. I was talking, right? Self-scanning experience web portfolio. It's because nobody's here to give you more context. It has to be self-explanatory. Content, writing, and visual design are the same self-scanning experience. You're not there to tell them more context. So it has to communicate well, it has to be to the point, it has to align with the logic people pursue, it has to align with the tasks people are completing. And so for that reason, it is important that you want it or not, we still need to learn that skill and become better at writing. I'm not saying we should be writing books and telling fantastic stories. I'm not good at this either, but it's a skill, it's a same design thinking skill. We have to understand for whom we're designing, the context they know in, and what is the information they're looking to hear, in which order, and what will make most sense, right? So how you say this, which hooks you use, this is the skill you can be building, like Chris is doing, I believe, in social media right now. But it's a skill for sure. And you can read about this, you can start learning more about it, but you don't have to become a writer to do this. You just have to understand for whom you're designing this text. And so it's tricky, especially if you just need to get the job. So your goal is not to become design writer, but it's a part of what we do. And good design is good communication. So we have to keep this in mind. And unfortunately, we have to at least understand the basics. We cannot just design lorem ipsums all the time.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think in the process of learning to write, again, not to say you need to be an author or to publish a white paper, whatever it is, but the process of learning to write is that you are a much clearer thinker, right? The process
Hmm.
of writing is also like, okay, well, what do I actually think about it, or what did I actually learn? And that just helps you in your thinking so much more, because you have
Mhm.
to basically have that argument with yourself and then put it on paper, because when it's in your head, you might know, but someone else doesn't. So how do you explain that? Usually
Mhm.
we just say things out loud like I'm doing, and we're like thinking off the top of the head. It might not be as coherent as you need it to be. And if you're pitching to your stakeholder, goddamn, you better be a little bit coherent, otherwise not walking around everywhere. So, but I guess the few things I would add to, like, okay, let's just say you suck at writing. You're literally starting from zero and you're like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. Okay, fine, right? There are other things that you can do now to make your case studies more engaging. One
Mm.
is like animated GIFs to show something versus tell. The other is also to show in sort of a video format. You have tools like Loom or Teller where you can literally record a video of either a screen recording or you talking about the thing that you're doing, right? And it doesn't always have to be written. Whatever form of communication, based on the tools we have now at your disposable, you can then use it, right? So you can also be a creative problem solver here. Like, how would you do it? The constraint is you can't write. Then how would you show it, right? Like, that would
Yeah.
be an interesting way to sort of reframe that problem if you suck at
Absolutely.
writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you have backgrounds in, I don't know, like animation, I don't know, like a video editing, etc. It's such a skill you can use. Why not go with this, right? Especially if you're applying to industries that could use that skill. So that's another lever even that you can use in your pitch.
Yeah, and I've seen like a lot of the best web designers on their portfolio, they don't have that much writing. And they just
Hmm.
do a really good job of doing like a show reel, how movie studios do it, but it's just flashing
Hmm.
like UI. And that could be enough on the homepage to hook them into the more longer sort of case study, right? Like, or the thumbnail.
Mm.
So you can be inventive about how you kind of do these things. Um, okay, so we kind of like running over a little bit. I would love to dive into some questions, and just to sort of start us off here, let me show this one on the screen. Okay, so I'll ask the question, and Anfisa, you'll help me answer this. How much detail should we be putting into our case studies?
Mm. Yeah, I can start, and then I would love to hear also from you. My point of view, well, if you want rule of thumb, try to not go more than 5 minutes. When you think about like medium case, right? There's always this how much time it takes to read this case study. Try to not go for more than 5 minutes, and even that is a lot. Think about the scanning experience. If when you scan the titles, you can even scan it under 30 seconds. That should already tell the story. How much content? Obviously, it depends on the story type. You can be super efficient. You can go with like key puzzles and just go for efficiency. For example, you can say, this was the problem. And I always encourage people in their titles to lead with their content and not with the step you followed. So instead of saying, I did research, say, what's the research insight? Like, we've learned people do not sit together. I always love this example because it tells immediately like what you've learned. And if you connect the dots with the context, we do not sit together for airplane booking system. Oh, okay. People couldn't find and book seats together, for example. That already gives an insight about what you worked on. And so, again, when you are designing the case study, how much details you want to provide there depends a little bit on your, I guess, even strategy. Who do you apply to? How much time they have? The more popular industries like hospitality, fintech, they usually receive more case studies, and you have to understand people don't have time to read your case studies. You have to be more to the point. A bit less popular industries, I don't know, for example, climate, social, even like, I don't know, like like I can't right now think about it, but tech industry sometimes like a bit more like accounting, security, etc. These industries have received less applications and they have a bit more time to read. So you can kind of adjust the length of it according to how busy is that industry maybe. But the structure, again, you can keep it super pragmatic. You can even keep it 2 minutes. For example, this was the problem. This is the title, what I've learned from this problem. Explorations, the problem I experienced or conflict. And here are the couple of solutions, my critical thinking, the impact. That's kind of it, right? It could be as simple as 2 minutes. But if you want to make it engage in a more wow effect, really stand out, you can then start playing out with the story, with how you structure that story. Sometimes you can make, like I already said earlier, a couple of mini stories, like we solved this problem before, during, after. We solved that problem before, during, after. So how you structure it, then it obviously, if it's a few mini stories, then it become maybe 5-7 minutes kind of read. But I will also have seen a good tactic from one of the designer who actually offered two paths. So you land on the case study, one pass, and it will visually show and like skip through the details, go for 2 minutes case study, or like a little lengthy, and you can see like a little doodle that it's a bit lengthy. 6 minutes read, and you pick which lane do you have, right now, how much time do you have to read. So you can design different ways to present your case study. Most importantly, just keep the structure, keep key points there, just enough to tell you're a critical thinker, good UI, you understand how to solve problems. What else is important? Like all the key things needs to be there, basically.
I saw someone do that too. The whole breaking it down. So they actually did like a 60-second video, and then
Mm,
a 2-minute read, and then like a
mm,
10-minute read. So like
mm,
different versions based on people who's gonna look, right. So whether it's
mhm.
a recruiter, the hiring manager, or a senior designer that is on the hiring committee. So that's
Yeah.
quite interesting. Yeah, for me, I'm gonna cheat, and everybody's gonna hate me by answering this, or like my answer, which is it's just gotta be enough to get you that phone call, that initial interview. So
Mhm.
detail wise, sure, like just kind of put your shoes in the hiring manager, where busy person
Yep.
looking through 100 applications. I think um, yeah, probably not long. That's what I would say. So
I
it's
agree.
really hard, right? It's really hard. But there might not be a magic length, but I like the sort of 5-minute read time. If you could do less in the age
Yep.
of social media and instant gratification, the quicker you get to the point and the quicker that person understands your skill, the the better conversion rate you would have to someone reaching out to you. So
Uh, I
yeah,
will just add a little thought before we move on.
sure.
I agree with you. The more you have, the more red flags you give them to close your portfolio. So actually going more to the points, even prioritizing efficiency and pragmatism in how you communicate your skills, it could give them less chances to like close your portfolio and move on to the next one, because sometimes you expand and they start realizing maybe you're not so good with accessibility, maybe you're not as good, and maybe the point you were making, the questions you were asking during research were not thoughtful enough. That gives them more chances to actually move on to the next one. And in the early stage, when you go through 500 portfolios, you're actually looking for the red flag so you can move on and faster go through this backlog. So yeah, shorter gives you also less risks, I would say.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's like humans, we kind of like move towards the red flag versus noticing the green ones immediately. Yeah,
Hmm.
no, that's a really
Yeah.
good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. Love that. Okay, so the next one is, in the absence of comprehensive research documentation, how do I approach a case study? Like, maybe we could make it a little bit harder or a little bit towards the spectrum. I've done limited research, right? So it's not even comprehensive research doc. It's just like there's limited research. What do I do in that situation?
Hmm. I guess how to approach case study. I guess what I'm hearing here from this question is that I'm worried I'm not gonna look professional. I didn't do my research, so it's not really about how you solve the problems when you don't research, but really how do I not look like I'm not enough professional. Um, I mean, because addressing the first question, it would be obviously you have critical thinking, you have like theoretical data, like all the best practices that you can always back to it and use your best guesses or use common knowledge of the company, blah, blah, blah. So that's one way to go about it, specifically working through the project. But if you don't want to communicate that, hey, I actually didn't have the research, I always personally, and maybe not everybody would agree with me, but I personally I encourage people to go for the truth. Um, Tell the story. What was the story about? Okay, if it was not about research, maybe the takeaway skill, the takeaway result was not based on research. It's understandable. Some companies, especially early stage startups, businesses dynamics are different, especially these days, because things are not smooth these days. we're not having the same fed budgets for everything. And so things are becoming more pragmatic. How do you overcome this? That's a great challenge. And telling that honest story will show a bit more vulnerability and like honesty in you. So again, it's not going to be cookie cutter perfect case study that everybody's trying to present, but also it will show how you solve problems and how do you operate in a little bit more challenging environments we all actually operate in today. So what skills you use? Critical thinking. How did you derive information? Did you do maybe workshops? Did you do just like a desk research? What key insight led you to I don't know, insights, etc.? What are the things that helped you to progress in that journey to arrive? Again, the story, if it ended up with the good result, remember, beginning, middle, and end, if the end was the opposite of the beginning, so in the beginning you had a problem, in the end you had solution, the solution that works, and you have a proof that it works, then the fact that you didn't have the research is not a big deal. The most important thing is how did you arrive to this working solution? What were the key insights, the key puzzles, the key, I guess, creative solutions that you arrived to that helped you to arrive to successful end, revelation at the end of the story? So that's a more interesting, I would say. And let's be honest, and that is a real story. Not everybody has a budget for research today.
Yeah, exactly. I really like that. Be honest and, tell a story of the strengths or what went well in the project to highlight those skills again. That's really good. Another question here. What is the biggest challenge you've ever faced in design? Whoa, this was huge. Uh,
Yeah.
do we have time for this? Like, what?
Where do we start?
Okay, maybe we can save this one till later. Let's keep it focused on case studies, and then we can maybe circle back. Okay,
Mhm.
here's a long one here. If the document is quite lengthy, is it okay to create a separate one for mobile stroke responsive design within the same project? Or should all the relevant information be kept together? What would a hiring manager typically expect?
I wonder if the document is a reference to the case study. Because I
I think
guess
so.
okay. Yeah. Because I was like, okay, we don't want to have the documents or reports, right? We want to make stories, framing, But I think if the point is, if my case study, so if we rephrase this, if my case study is quite lengthy, is it okay to create separate ones for mobile responsive design within the same project, or should the relevant information be kept together? I guess I still see like a few puzzles here, a few points or questions. So relevant information again, I think we partly covered today this part, but um, structure. Make sure you follow the structure. How much information in detail you inject there, that's the question, right? You can always shrink this information, and you can cut the information that might add more noise, or keep it to the point, to the essence, right? So the information, that's where you can go a little bit, like you have to adjust sometimes. If it's lengthy, remove the insights that don't help the story to evolve. Think about the end. End is this final result. This is a solution that works smoothly, elegantly, blah, 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 solves the problem. Okay, what are the insights that did not contribute directly to that solutions that you can remove? Just remove the noise. You probably learned a lot of things, and that helps a lot, especially you in a daily life basis as a designer. But for that particular story, pragmatically, what are the insights that really helped you to arrive to that solution? Just keep it all very important, like all the key pieces there, like again, to the point. Um, Start not from how you went through the process, but start from, again, keeping the story arc in mind. This is the end solution. I know it works. Here's the proof. Reverse it to the beginning. In the beginning, we had this problem. Okay. And then in the middle, you start removing the pieces that might not fully contribute to that end, right? So be pragmatic. I guess that would be the tip. Um, but responsive design, I guess it's a bit of a different question. Oh, as for typical web design, right? With responsive design, adjust the layer or sometimes hide the sections. It's just a part of the, not to say sacrifices, but adjustments we do for the mobile or web design. But it's probably a bigger question, right? So how do we approach website that has less real estate? I don't know if we should cover this question right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. We do have a few more, so let's just get through them.
Yeah,
How much should we be saving for the presentation versus the case study itself? Is there,
that's a good question.
yeah, is there like a ratio that you typically advise folks, or how do you approach this?
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't say there it's about the length. but it's about like having those hooks and questions. So did you show just enough to make me interested? Okay, you mentioned you're good with story, like no, not to say mentioned, you mentioned you're very analytical and here are the key points, but you didn't exactly go into how do you find these points with questions you asked during the research, right? So you kind of, with the titles, with the key arguments, like in Mint pyramid, key arguments, you showed that those are the interesting arguments, things that don't come to your mind right away. So they show the depths of your thinking. Great. You show that you actually learn something as you work through a project, but how do you arrive to those? You don't have actually the time to communicate it fully because we're not writing books in the websites. So you don't have time to really communicate all the things you went through. You just want to make sure that key insights or key arguments are full of like quality, so that people want to hear more about how you arrive there, how do you learn, this insight, what questions you've asked, what are the other assumptions you had, or things like that, right? So you don't want to overwhelm them with everything that went through your mind. You want to show the qualitative insights, qualitative explorations, key arguments, key critical thinking, and then that should give them enough of the understanding that you understand what you're doing, so that they can invite you further and sort of went through it in depth and kind of through your thinking process in depth, basically.
This question comes up a lot and a lot of times. What do you do if you sign an NDA on your project? How to present that in a case study?
Yeah, there are so many ways to do this, honestly. While it's not going to be ever a wonderful, elegant, always working solution, there are always like some sort of workarounds through the NDA project. The simplest, the one that we all use and have seen many times, is obviously putting it under the password, but always remember that you want to make a password as accessible as possible, because if you just see a slap in your face like, uh-oh, like, where's the passwords? They don't have motivation, and they're not really, as a hiring manager who has to go through 500 portfolios, they are not very motivated to reach out to you to find the password. So you need to make it super simple to reach that password. Very often, if you think about, again, the user journey, if you apply through the application tracking system, even sometimes through LinkedIn, if you apply with your CV, in your CV, you can hide that password. So it's already very close to where they started this user journey. So if the hiring manager opened your CV, got interested, the CV password is right there. You click copy pasted it and open the next link, your portfolio. Everything is streamlined. It works. However, if they reach out to you sort of from the internet, if they found your portfolio somewhere from the research or whatever finding online, then it's a bit harder. So you have to increase the motivation for people to reach out for the password. It could be as simple as putting your face and LinkedIn link and say, and even like shortcut the message, sort of hyperlink to right away reach out for the message. So how do you reduce that friction to reach out for the password? That's the typical the design question you should be asking. Or you can even show them a little bit of the preview. Depending on the type of a story, if this project is public, but you cannot speak about the details, you can put the final product already, like some press release, link to, I don't know, articles around it, etc., up there, or show the final UI. You can even speak about your personal learnings. So without revealing the business context information and things, you can speak about what you've learned through this project. So think about your sort of personal story, like, I've learned this, I overcome this challenge, and I don't know, I became better at XYZ. So you can have like a little section with your personal takeaway stories, or again, have some sort of public information that could be shared right in front of that password protected area. Or I've also seen people, what was another way to, forget already, but there's another way how you can do this. Actually, I have an article about it, but I'll probably be able to throw it later. I don't have it right next to me with some examples.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, I'll try and dig it up after and put it in the comments of this post. So another question we have here: how would you feel about a short video below the case study where a candidate briefly walks through it? How would you feel if you landed on something like this, Anfisa? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Would you watch it? What's your usual behavior when you look at case studies?
So it sounds like first the hiring manager will have to go through the whole content, written content of the case study, and at the end see the video. I mean, I personally would just ask like why and what's the intention behind it. What's the user journey you're designing for? I mean, probably you have some thinking behind it. So if it has intention, maybe it's a good idea. If I imagine myself going through, always like, I guess, just role play it in your head, going through 500 portfolios, you open the case study, first you want to see final solution, then you see the title, is it interesting, do I want to read this, what's the context in which you worked, what are the insights, blah blah blah. So you kind of go through this journey, but I'm guessing again, if you design this journey in a way that you have all multiple paths, like we discussed, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or video, etc., what is the path that you want this hiring manager to take? At the end, what is the thing that you want to show that wasn't shown before? Like, do you want to replicate the same information? I don't see the point. But if it actually enhances the story by showing, I don't know, even the final reel, or how this like different in context and how this works, how it feels, maybe that makes sense. So I don't know what you plan to have in that video, but if it supports the story, it probably works. If it repeats the same story, I don't see the point, to be honest. But again,
Yeah.
depends.
I mean, like, imagine trying to do a video for like each of your case studies, and you've got like 3 to 5. That's a
Mhm.
lot of work.
Mm,
And maybe it's a practice for your portfolio presentation, or
mm,
or individual pieces of work presentation. But yeah, that's a lot of work. I think what could work well for video is like the about me section or the homepage, where
yeah.
it's like a bit of you. You can talk about things you like, like a bit more personal. So they're like, okay, this person seems like kind of a person that's a good vibe, cares what
Mm,
mission driven company. That's what we are as well, or cares about these things. That's like write down our values, kind of playbook. Something like that will be quite nice. Funny story is I did this. I made a video on my portfolio to explain like different sections of my portfolio. Just like, hey, here's all the articles I wrote, or here's this thing I did. Here's how I think
mm,
about culture design, and here's the actual design work stuff. Um, and then at the end, I was like, here's actually what I'm looking for, because and it was under a minute. And because recruiters kept on reaching out to me on LinkedIn before I was using it, like I'm using it now. I was just like, I'm so sick of this. Like, just stop like messaging me. So I was like, yeah. It's like clearly I wasn't looking for that type of design work. So you could use it as that as well to
yeah,
state
reuse.
what you actually want, so that you attract the things that you
Mm,
want versus maybe some other opportunities, or you're not misunderstanding.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. I guess it's true. Again, backs to reflection. You reflect it. You know where you're targeting. You know exactly the perfect fit for your skills. You saving time to those companies who reach out and realize, oh, maybe you're a little bit more into B2B than, for example, B2B, B2C concept, and so we're not going to be a good fit. So you already claimed it and kind of filtered the companies that might not be a good fit. I know in the current market, it's probably sounds privileged to say that, but very often it's about matchmaking at the end of the day. So we both want, you and the company want to find the perfect fit, skills, culture, and by saying what you're looking for, you help yourself and them to save time at the end of the day. And so it could be a more perfect match for them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for answering all our questions. There's probably more, but we don't have enough time for today. And I want to give you a chance to do this PSA. So P is plug, S is share, and C is ask. Your ask from the audience. So let's start with your P. What do you want to plug today, Anfisa?
Oh my God, I don't know where to start. I haven't think about it. I guess what I can plug is just the community I'm running. So if you are looking for support in the portfolio, I know it's mentally draining exercise because you have to think through a lot of complexity and you don't know which phrases to pick, which pieces of the story to pick. If you're struggling with that, check out the community. We do a lot of workshops. We have accountability groups. We have design critiques. We keep each other accountable so you can get support you need in this process. But also, people share inside information. And we have guests like Chris who joined the community one day and share all the things you can use to your advantage to actually stand out in this process. So, yeah, you can check out the community. The website is actually kind of work in progress, but it's Let me find it. It's into you. Nah, okay, it's into uxdesign.framer.website. I'm gonna send the link, but it's work in progress. Apologies for the website that is not perfect yet. Well, it's never perfect, right? And the
Exactly.
second one. What was the second
Mhm.
one?
The second one was share. Have you got something to share? Like, it could be anything, an interesting TV series, it could be a book
Mm,
you've read recently, or something you learned, whatever you want to share with the audience.
good question. I think the last book that I liked, and we talked a little bit about storytelling. I will plug the story, or I will share the book that I personally liked. It's called Design is Storytelling. Simple as that. It's not a very popular book. I don't think it's talked enough about, but I really liked it. It's very to the point. It's very visual. It's very short. It's like the kids would like this book, but it's really great as an introduction to storytelling and why storytelling is so important. It touches so many levels of good user experience design and how design is all about storytelling. So I encourage everyone to read this. Super easy, super fun book to read. Yeah.
Perfect. And then the last one is, what is your ask from me, from the audience? What is your ask in general, if you have one?
Okay, let's see. I don't know if that's the ask. I guess I would probably encourage people to think. It's gonna be the ask as a homework for people to think about. If you listen to this presentation today, great. I would encourage you to think and ask you to think about what makes you different on the market today. What is your unique selling value proposition? What is one thing that you do so well nobody else could replicate? And that would be the ask for people to think about on their homework and free time, sort of. So that next time hiring manager asks you what makes you different, blah blah, you have something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great advice. Okay, Anfisa, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to take you off stage and do a quick housekeeping wrap up, and
Yeah,
bring you back on just to say bye, and then let's chat afterwards. Okay, just give me a
sounds
couple of
great.
minutes. All right, thank you.
Sounds good. Ciao.
All right, guys. Before we go, of course, we should talk about the next LinkedIn Live and when I'm going to see you guys next. We are going to be doing another one of these on November the 13th. And I'll be speaking to Sean, the senior brand manager at Dovetail. And if you don't know Dovetail, Dovetail is your go to platform for customer insights. And we're going to get an inside look into making sense of customer research. So if you've ever had trouble with user research and with all these data points, how do you make sense of it? I think you'll really like this session. And Sean's going to be he's going to show us how to use AI in our research process to make it so much easier and quicker. So don't miss that. It's on November the 13th. And this is a new format where I and we get a behind the scenes of how some of the best companies design and think about their product. So this is the I guess you get to see how the sausage is made, especially from a research platform. How do they think about research, and how do they empower us designers to do it at scale? So tune into that, and if you want to be notified, uh, scan this QR code. If I can bring it up, where is this QR code button? Okay, you can either scan that QR code right there, top left, or you can go to live.uxplaybook.org to get notified whenever the new event is out. I usually send out a reminder on Monday, so watch out for that in your inbox. And again, you can scan this QR code here. So, yep. Again, yeah. To listen to more of these conversations, check out that QR code, and let's get Anfisa on for the last final words about your case study, and then we will wrap this up and play the outro. So, Anfisa, do you have any final words for our friends who are worrying and stressing about their case studies and that it's not good enough? What do you like? What? How can you help them? Feel better. Any final words here?
Feel better. Question. Good question. find yourself somebody to help you being accountable. I think I mean, it sounds like I'm promoting my community, but it's true. It's true. Like I've seen people who just struggle through the process. You sit in the vacuum, you feel sort of soaked in your own thinking, and you don't know what's going on. Just go out there, present the story that you're designing to your friend, mentor, uh, community, find a peer, and help yourself out there. Like, just find yourself a friend who can hear you out as you're building your case study. Accountability is super important and helpful.
Yeah, and the benefit is also like you get a third person perspective because maybe you are the harshest judge on your own work, and maybe it's pretty damn good,
Yeah.
and you're just like, no, perfectionism mind always comes into play with designers,
Oh, yeah.
right? Yeah,
Absolutely. You're right.
there we
Yeah,
go.
sometimes it just
Okay,
needs to be
yeah.
good enough, like you said.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you again for joining this conversation. And well, yeah, check out Into UX Design. Anfisa left a link in the thread on LinkedIn, so you guys can check out that community. So make sure you go there if you're struggling with everything portfolio and that you need some peers that will, cheer you on and support you. And I'll make sure I'll pin that as well after this conversation. So thank you again for this conversation. It was really insightful, and yeah, can't wait for the community to be thriving and lots of people joining to build their portfolios. Okay, so let me play the outro and we'll call it a day. Cheers, everybody. Bye. This is the design of everyday people.
It sound right, boy.
Of everyday people.